and welcome. You watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. For 12 months now, the Russia-Ukraine war has been dominating global headlines and dinner table conversations. There have been claims and counterclaims from both sides. The rhetoric has escalated, so has the propaganda. This conflict has had far-reaching implications for the entire world. And as the war completes 1 year, who is winning this war, Russia or Ukraine? There is no answer to that question yet. But there has been a clear winner in this war. We tell you all about who emerged victorious. That's coming up in just a few minutes. We also ask if Moscow will open another front in this war and get you live reports from on the ground as we on reports from Ukraine. Also on the show for you tonight, a zombie drug is haunting America. What is this drug? Why is it called the zombie drug? Why is it causing concern? Pakistan's mounting economic woes are leading to a spike in frustration and levels of desperation among the people. We get you a Gravitas special report. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to visit India. What's on the agenda? What are the expectations? Are Boeing's Dreamliners unsafe? We tell you why concerns are growing. Nothing flies as fast as time. The Ukraine war is 1 year old today. It is blood-stained, and it seems to have become a stalemate with no clear victors. Or so you think. The Ukraine war actually has a clear winner, and Gravitas is not afraid to declare it. The winner of the Ukraine war is the global arms industry. The colossal arms industry, the industry that made $2 trillion in the last 1 year alone. Every bomb, every shell, every missile fired by both sides achieved one thing. It sounded a boom for the arms manufacturers and dealers the world over. Their order books grew fat. They were the principal beneficiaries of Mariupol and other pools of misery, Kherson, Kharkiv, and the likes. You may disagree with us. You may believe that the defense industry is not the winner of the war. Their propagandists will tell you that they are doing the world a service. So stay with us as we state the facts. You see, when Russian tanks began rolling into Ukraine, it changed the dynamics of strategic thinking. Not only had an inconceivable war started in Europe, but across the world, nations woke up and realized that their regional tensions could escalate suddenly and quickly into active conflict. The West, intent so far on extending the NATO embrace, began to get nightmares about the revival of the Russian Empire. In Asia, countries started fearing a copycat war. What if China replicated Ukraine in Taiwan? China has never hidden its desire to absorb Taiwan. And what if it started to use military means? The first impact in the region would be on Japan, which believes Taiwan's security is synonymous with its own security. Ukraine made one thing clear: the global order was changing, and countries started to prepare for this new order with a simple doctrine: safety first. And this meant armament and rearmament. Do you prepare for an uncertain future? How do you do that? Well, you arm up. Countries that had presumed that they were safe under an American umbrella, like Japan and Germany, decided that they could no longer outsource their security. Countries that had limited defense spending escalated their defense budgets, and all of these countries ended up going to the same place for the solution: the offices of the defense contractors. Listen to the facts and draw your own conclusions. The shares of British defense giant BAE Systems up 52% since the war started. Italy's Leonardo, 60%. SAB shares are up 161%. Shares of Germany's Rheinmetall AG, which makes the Leopard battle tank, are up 156%. You see, the reason is obvious. Ukraine has had an endless demand for tanks and every kind of weaponry, while others are not far behind. Perhaps Putin has become the best weapon salesperson of modern times indirectly. Lockheed Martin shares are up 24% since the start of the war. Northrop Grumman, 20%. What would you call them if not the winners of the Ukraine war? 2022 was a bumper year for the defense industry, with orders coming in even from the countries that have not been on defense shopping spree in around 8 decades now. Germany and Japan, Axis powers in the Second World War, were permitted only controlled rearming after the Second World War. They embraced a pacifist tag, and their economies benefited from limited spending on defense. But the war in Ukraine changed all of this. Japan, for that matter, has doubled its military spending in a new 5-year defense plan. It has jumped up to become the world's 3rd biggest military spender in a single year. Japan's leader, Fumio Kishida, called this the quote-unquote turning point of the national security policy. Also in the past year, Germany has announced a spend of 100 billion euros or $106 billion on defense. The Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, called it a sea change. Today, Poland wants to increase its defense budget to 3% of its GDP. France wants to increase its military spending by more than 30%. Consulting firm McKinsey & Company estimating that Europe's military spending will increase by 53% between 2021 and 2026. But you see, this big spending is not limited to just Europe. Neither is the profit. Less than 6 days into the Ukraine war, an Israeli paper had declared that the country's defense industry was the early winner of the war. It said the war in Ukraine caused Germany to double its defense budget and sent other European countries scrambling for weapons. The big victor is Elbit Systems, the shares of which soared by 18% in just 2 days. In 2022, South Korea declared that it wants to become the world's 4th largest weapons exporter by the year 2027. South Korea, in fact, struck a $6 billion deal with Poland to sell arms. Its arm factories are humming with profit. Norway and Estonia as well started talks with South Korean defense manufacturers. What worked in favor of Seoul is that Korea defense contractors were willing to transfer technology. And that is something American defense giants don't do. But this did not stop Americans from pocketing deals. U.S. military equipment sale to foreign countries shot up 49%. How much is that jump in dollars? $205.6 billion. American defense giants Lockheed Martin, Raytheon received record orders. Lockheed's Javelin anti-tank missiles and HIMARS rocket launcher became a popular name in this war. In many ways, the Ukraine war was like a free ad campaign for the arms industry. For instance, every time a drone caused mayhem in Ukraine, the global media started digging up details of the drone. Which country was it made in? What is the drone's name? What are its features, its cost? Everything was being aired to a global audience free of cost. Drones, in specific, were being discussed as the game changer in this war. Ukraine used Turkish drones in its counter-offensive, and Russia bought drones from Iran. India's nascent arms industry has doubtless benefited from the new environment. At the recent Aero Show, Indian drones attracted discerning attention from arms purchasers. The show itself was one of the most successful ones so far. Abu Dhabi also recently held its Defense Industry Expo. It turned out to be the largest and the most well-attended in years. Analysts were not surprised. They pointed at the war in Ukraine, also at this number. In 2022, the global military expenditure crossed $2.1 trillion for the first time ever. $2.1 trillion. And this number is only expected to grow further. So would you still disagree with me when I say that the defense industry is the only winner so far of this Ukraine war? Let's go straight across now to our correspondent Anas Malik, who has been tracking the very latest coming in from Ukraine all through this week. Anas, tell us more about what's happening on the ground. Tell us more about where you are and what the people around you have been telling you.
Well, Molly, I'm currently in the strategic city of Mykolaiv. Earlier today, we were in Kherson, where we have been reporting from. Kherson is very near or just off the Dnieper River, and this is where I'm standing. This is the junction. So anybody who wants to get to Odessa, they'll have to come to Mykolaiv, and similarly anybody traveling from Kherson will have to come to Mykolaiv. Mykolaiv was also under Russian occupation, or they tried to capture it at least. For 7 weeks on these roads, what you see scenes behind me, scenes like these, they're very common, of destruction and death. 130 civilians were killed in an armory, in an infantry and an artillery battle on the roads of Mykolaiv. In Kherson, where we were earlier today, shelling still continued. That was under occupation of Russian forces for about 9 months, and then only after to be retaken by the Ukrainian armed forces in November last year. So by and large, at least in the southern part of the country where we are right now, we've been here for a week. I was here last year as well, covering for WION, and WION has been tracking it very closely from the ground. The things have changed. At least in the southern side, the impact of the war is still felt. In the center or in the west, people have come to terms with it. They are trying to live around with what is the new normal. But the southern end of the country is yet to get a grip of it. And that is the reason there's this palpable fear that is preventing people from going out more and more. Molly?
Right. Earlier, Ukraine also sought an extension of that deal that would also include the ports of Mykolaiv, the grain shipment deal. Tell us more, Anas, about the significance of this move and why Ukraine is pushing for the same.
Mykolaiv is a ship-breaking and shipbuilding city. Ukraine sought an extension. As I said, it is a junction. It is a junction that basically gives you the access to the southern side of the country, and in case and to the Crimean Peninsula as well. So in case, if at all, this gets blocked, Ukrainian exports via the sea route or the land route, or even imports, they're hostage. The reason the Ukrainian side sought an extension to that route up till Mykolaiv, and it totally makes sense. The reason the Russian side wanted to go ahead and annex it or capture it in the the early days of the war. As I said, for 7 weeks on these roads, scenes like these that are behind me of destruction, they're very common around here in Mykolaiv, in Kherson, where we were earlier today. So, as I said, it's a very strategic, it's a strategically placed city. It's a junction to the southern end of the country, and in case if it's blocked, the imports, both the imports and the exports, they become hostage, or they're essentially blocked as well. So you have nowhere to go. The reason this city becomes very much more important, and the reason Ukraine sought an extension, Molly.
Anas Malik reporting live from Mykolaiv in Ukraine. Thanks very much for now. And as we mark the first anniversary of the Russia-Ukraine war, hopes of it ending anytime soon are only getting dimmer. In fact, on the contrary, there is a real possibility of another front opening up. A possibility that the war may get even bigger. That front is possibly located in Transnistria. Where exactly is Transnistria located? It is a narrow strip of land between Moldova and Ukraine. Transnistria is a breakaway region of Moldova. Internationally, it is recognized as part of Moldova. Moscow is Transnistria's only backer. In fact, the region even hosts a Russian military contingent. So, is it certain that Transnistria is going to be another front in the Ukraine war? I can't provide you with the exact answer. Perhaps the answer lies in the heads of the Russian leaders. All I can say with certainty is that Moldova is on the edge. Because the Russian Defense Ministry has accused Ukraine of stepping up preparations. Preparations aimed at invading Transnistria. According to Moscow, Ukrainian military hardware and troops are deployed at Ukraine-Transnistria border. Moscow has vowed a response to Ukraine's impending provocation. And here's what the Russian Defense Ministry says. The implementation of the plotted provocation by the Ukrainian authorities poses a direct threat to the Russian peacekeeping contingent legally stationed in Transnistria. So just how accurate are the Russian claims? Is Ukraine really planning to invade the pro-Russian breakaway region? There hasn't been any word from Kiev, but Moldova has denied Moscow's allegation. In fact, it has appealed for calm. Moldova has called Russia's charge an element of psychological operation. But there is no denying the fact that Moscow's ties with Moldova have been fraying. This month, the Moldovan parliament approved a pro-Western government. Moldova's president has accused Moscow of plotting a coup. And here's what the Russian presidential spokesperson said last week.
Так, с Молдавией отношения весьма и весьма напряженные. При этом молдавское руководство, вы знаете, оно делает акцент на, наверное, на всем антироссийском. Тоже скатывается в такую антироссийскую истерию. Такое отсутствие конструктивизма вряд ли чем-то.
Finally, let's just try to answer what would Russia gain if it indeed decided to open a new war front from Moldova? Well, for starters, military experts believe that it would serve as a distraction for the Ukrainian military, which is already stretched thin on resources and manpower in Donbass. Also, the Russian military action in Transnistria could destabilize Moldova because the region is still effectively part of Moldova. You see, in recent years, Moldova has moved away from Moscow's sphere of influence. It has become increasingly pro-West. Instability in Moldova is likely to benefit Moscow, and that is what Russia would like to believe. But again, as far as future Russian moves are concerned, there are no clear answers yet. What I can say, though, is that accusing Ukraine of massing troops at Moldova border is a perfect pretext for Moscow, a pretext for a military operation there. For Moscow, it would be a preemptive military move. And Russia, by the way, has done that before. After all, Russia's invasion of Ukraine last February was a preemptive military move as well. And as the war expands to new frontiers, countries that once refused to take sides are slowly shedding their veneer of neutrality and slowly getting more involved in this war. Take the case of China. Earlier this week, it sent its top diplomat to Beijing, to Moscow. He met the Russian president, the Russian foreign minister, even Russia's spy chief. All three interactions revolved around strengthening Russia's strategic partnership with China and, in their own words, opposing the West's bullying tactics. These talks raised suspicion on whether China was seeking a greater role in this conflict. Doubts on whether it was slowly getting more involved in this war. And as it turns out, those suspicions were not entirely misplaced. Have a look at this headline. After providing economic support to Russia, Beijing could now be selling drones to Moscow. At least that is what the German news outlet claims. In a report published on Thursday, it said that Russia is in talks with a Chinese manufacturer to buy around 100 drones. 100 drones. Which manufacturer is this? A company called Xi'an Bingo Intelligent Aviation Technology. It was founded in 2017 by a man called Ma Jingdong. And according to the report, this company is preparing to make 100 prototypes of its ZT-180 drone. This drone can reportedly carry warheads weighing anywhere between 35 to 50 kilograms. Now, for the unversed, the ZT-180 drone is quite similar to Iran's Shahid-136. And this drone is designed to attack ground targets from a distance. It is fired in multiples from a launch rack. For the last 1 year, Russia has been reportedly using these drones under the name Geran-2. And very soon, it could be using China's ZT-180 drone, only with a new name. The report further adding that the company which makes these drones could very soon set up a production site in Russia. A site where 100 such drones could be made every month. And before I go any further, let me reiterate this. These are claims made by one German news outlet, which, by the way, has not cited any specific sources. So for now, these are claims at best. But as they say, there is no smoke without fire. For weeks now, American security experts and government officials have been saying that China could be on the brink of supplying arms to Russia. This includes Antony Blinken himself, the U.S. Secretary of State. In a recent interview, he said, and I'm quoting, "The concern that we have now is based on information we have that they are considering providing lethal support. And we have made very clear to them that this could cause a serious problem for us and in our relationship." This was followed by another warning, this time from the NATO chief. He said, and I'm quoting again, "We have not seen any supplies of lethal aid from China to Russia, but we have seen signs that they are considering and may be planning for that. That is the reason why the United States and other allies have been very clear, warning against that, and China should of course, not support Russia's illegal war." Even the president of Ukraine spoke about this. Last week, he told a German daily that if China sends weapons to Russia, the conflict in Ukraine could soon become a world war. Let me quote, "For us, it is important that China does not support the Russian Federation in this war. In fact, I would like it to be on our side. At the moment, however, I don't think it's possible. But I do see an opportunity for China to make a pragmatic assessment of what is happening here. Because if China allies itself with Russia, there will be a world war. And I do think that China is aware of that." A world war. That's what Volodymyr Zelensky thinks China's involvement in this war could lead to. And from where we see it, this assessment is not really off the mark. And here's why I say this. Iran, that's another regional heavyweight, is already giving arms to Russia. For the last 1 year, in fact, Tehran has sent countless kamikaze drones. And if reports are to be believed, it might just send ballistic missiles by this October. And now you have China allegedly doing the same. What exactly are these countries up to? Are they looking to escalate this conflict? Have they joined hands against Ukraine and the NATO? It certainly seems like it. And our next story comes from the United States. Before I tell you what I'm talking about, have a look at these images. These are videos that are doing the rounds on social media. People can be seen walking strangely, behaving in a manner that is as bizarre as it could get. Their behavior is being called zombie-like. Now, we've all heard of zombies. There are movies that talk about them. But what really is going on here? What's making these people behave this way? Are they acting, pretending to be zombies? Why would they do that? Now, let me just say this very clearly. WION cannot independently verify the authenticity of these photos and videos shared on social media. But these videos are surfacing at a worrying time when concerns have been rising over a drug in the United States. It's being called by different names. It's being called the zombie drug, a flesh-eating drug, skin-rotting drug. And it once again is bringing America's worsening opioid epidemic to the forefront. At the heart of this horror story lies an animal tranquilizer. It's called xylazine. It is showing up in street drugs, causing skin disease, severe wounds, which could even lead to limb amputation. First things first, what is xylazine? The animal tranquilizer is known by street names like Tranq, zombie drug. It came into being in 1962 as an anesthetic for veterinary procedures. In human beings, the drug led to respiratory depression and low blood pressure. So the trials were stopped. It then started being used as an addictive substitute for heroin. And this started most likely in the 2000s. It causes wounds which, if left untreated, can lead to amputation. It can knock you out for hours. So it can leave the users vulnerable for long periods of time. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, xylazine is classified as a central nervous system depressant. In Philadelphia, more than 90% of the lab-tested dope samples there were positive for xylazine, more than 90% of them. And this problem, by the way, is not just limited to Philadelphia. It is increasingly making its presence felt in the drug-hot zones across the United States. A study detected xylazine in the drug supply in 36 states and the District of Columbia. In New York City, xylazine has been found in 25% of the drug samples. The zombie drug is causing horror across America. How exactly? The animal sedative is being mixed with fentanyl. Xylazine is added to fentanyl as an adulterant to increase the potency or the weight. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. According to this report by the Washington Post, on average, one person dies of fentanyl overdose in the United States every 7 minutes, killing more people than car accidents, gun violence, and suicide. In Philadelphia itself, fentanyl mixed with xylazine is being sold for only a few dollars per bag. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration earlier warned the healthcare professionals about the drug. And this is what complicates matters. It does not show up in routine toxicology screens and can be difficult to distinguish from opioid use. And since it's not an opioid, xylazine may not respond to a standard treatment for opioid overdoses. And now let me tell you why this is a serious problem. Overdose deaths in the United States involving opioids have been on the rise. The number increased from over 70,000 in 2020 to almost 81,000 in 2021. And here's the bigger worry. Deaths caused by an overdose of synthetic opioids like fentanyl were the biggest contributor to the overall number of deaths. As the zombie drug wreaks havoc, the US needs to up its game to tackle this menace before time runs out. And our next story comes from Pakistan. Before I tell you about it, I want you to watch a video. It's of a Pakistani citizen expressing his views on the economy. Have a look.
जी बिल्कुल ठीक नारे लग रहे हैं. वही चीज मैं आपको बताने लगा था कि 1947 समथिंग जब हमारा पाकिस्तान आजाद हुआ इंडिया से, अंग्रेजों की गवर्नमेंट थी. मैं कह रहा हूं अल्लाह ना करता ऐसा होता ही ना, सारा पाक हिंद एक होता. आज आपको टमाटर 20 रुपए किलो मिलते, चिकन 150 रुपए किलो मिलता, पेट्रोल 150 रुपए लीटर मिलता आपको. अब हमारी बदकिस्मती नहीं है कि इतने अरसे के बाद हमें मतलब एक अल्लाह पाक ने पाकिस्तानी मुल्क दिया जिसमें मुसलमानों वाला सिलसिला ही कोई नहीं है, चक्कर ही कोई नहीं है मुसलमानों वाला. तो इससे अच्छा तो वो मूंदी है. यकीन माने उसके लोग उसे कैसे मानते हैं और वो कैसे अपने लोगों के साथ संसेर है मोदी. हमें मोदी मिल जाए, हमें तो नहीं नवाज शरीफ चाहिए, ना बेनजीर चाहिए, ना हमें इमरान खान चाहिए, कोई भी नहीं, जनरल मुशर्रफ भी नहीं चाहिए. हमें सिर्फ प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी चाहिए जो इस मुल्क के टेढ़ों को सीधा करे.
Well, you heard that. We want someone like Indian Prime Minister Modi, someone who can get mischief makers on the right track. Now, I don't know whether to laugh at this or sympathize with the people of Pakistan, because such is the state of affairs in their country that they are wishing for the Indian Prime Minister to take over their country. The question is, what explains such desperate remarks? Well, what else but Pakistan's economy? It is on the deathbed, battling for survival. Just look at the statistics. The rate of inflation in the country is standing at 15.4%. The value of the Pakistan rupee is 258 against the dollar. There are just $3.25 billion left in foreign reserves, and the GDP growth forecast has been trimmed to 4.3% for this year. And if we speak of fuel prices, petrol is selling at 272 rupees per litre, diesel is selling at 262 rupees per litre, kerosene selling at 217 rupees per litre. The price of milk has increased from 190 rupees per litre to 235. If I speak of chicken prices, a kilogram of chicken now costing 700 to 780 Pakistani rupees. If I speak of boneless chicken meat, it has hit a new high of 1,000 rupees per kilogram. This is the state of affairs where prices of edibles, of daily essentials, have become unaffordable for most Pakistanis. Of course, they are going to wish they were in India. And what about the government? Does it have a wish list as well? Yes, it does. But its wishes are only making the common man's life more miserable. And not just the common man. Some take Islamabad's latest move, for instance. It has hiked tax on luxury goods and services. Why is that? So that it could get an IMF bailout. Reports say taxes on a raft of luxury imports will be increased in order to unlock the new batch of an IMF loan. According to the Pakistani media, sales tax will likely be increased from 17% to 25%. And which items will this cover? Mainly imports of luxury cars, also household appliances like chocolates and cosmetics. And by the way, this increase is just the beginning. Pakistan's finance minister says that in the days ahead, their Prime Minister could introduce more such austerity measures. Next question. How much loan has the IMF promised? 6.5 billion. But that is only after Pakistan meets certain criteria. That's right. The International Monetary Fund has set certain conditions for Pakistan if it wants to secure the much-needed financial aid. Conditions like setting up an anti-corruption task force, hiking the electricity tariffs, and imposing a levy on the petroleum products. Now, last we checked, the country's Prime Minister had agreed to follow these conditions. This is what he recently told his officials in Islamabad. We have to accept unwillingly the strict conditions for the IMF deal, which I hope would be sealed soon. Next question. Why is the IMF after Pakistan? Why can it just not give the money? There are a host of reasons here, two of them standing out. One is the fear that Pakistan will not be able to repay the loan. Number two, the fact that rich Pakistanis contribute very little to the economy. Let me just read out a statement from the IMF's managing director, who summed up the situation quite well. I'm quoting, "Those who are making good money in public or private sectors need to contribute to the economy. It should not be that the wealthy benefit from the subsidies. It should be the poor who benefit from them." Well, she has a point. Pakistan's rich and elite actually do not contribute enough. It's almost like there are two worlds that exist in the country. We have reported on this in the past. Pakistan has two starkly different worlds with starkly different lifestyles and starkly different opportunities. The first world comprises of the richy rich, Pakistan's exclusive and powerful elite. You know, the corporate honchos, the feudal landlords, the army generals, and the politicians. They all live within a compact which allows wealth, it allows power to perpetuate over generations and keep the common man out. In fact, many say that this elite has taken Pakistan from being an Islamic republic to a 1% republic, meaning opportunities, power and wealth in the country are limited to the top 1% of the people. The remaining 99% forming the other world. A world of violent repression, curtailing of human rights, unwarranted detentions, arbitrary arrests. The inhabitants of this world are people with low to no representation. They live in a completely different country, with literacy levels, living standards, and health facilities being poles apart from the other world I just told you about. And even now, during Pakistan's worst economic turmoil, these two worlds are living different lives. On one hand, the rich and the elite are queuing outside the country's first ever Tim Hortons. Can you believe that? On the other hand, the middle class is failing to send its children to schools. Have a look at this headline. A number of families in Pakistan struggling to make ends meet. So much so that some of them have stopped sending their children to school. Why is that? So that they can use the fee money to run the household instead. This is what it has gotten to. So you cannot really blame Pakistani citizens for wishing that the Indian Prime Minister could run their country as well. And Boeing is in the news once again. As you may have guessed, it's bad news. The American plane maker has not delivered a single 787 Dreamliner jet since the 26th of January. It has nothing to do with India's Republic Day or the supply chains. The problem here is that of safety. The new Dreamliners may not be safe, or so fears the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration of the United States of America. It thinks that the fuselage components of the Dreamliners need additional analysis. Now, what's a fuselage, you ask? A fuselage is the plane's body, and the FAA is not sure about the components of this body. Sounds quite scary, does it not? The FAA wants to be completely sure about these components before it allows Boeing to resume delivering the new Dreamliners. The American plane maker has released a statement. It reads, and I'm quoting from it now. In reviewing certification records, Boeing discovered an analysis error by our supplier related to the 787 forward pressure bulkhead. We notified the FAA and have paused 787 deliveries while we complete the required analysis and documentation. Basically, Boeing here is saying that it was the one that notified the FAA about the issue. Now, is the company trying to absolve itself of any guilt or wash its hands of any incident that may occur in the coming days? What about the Dreamliners that were delivered between last year and this one? Are they safe? Boeing's statement does not answer this question. It says the FAA is working with Boeing to determine any actions that might be required for recently delivered airplanes. So what about the old Dreamliners that are currently in operation? In India, for example, Vistara operates Dreamliners, so does Air India. And you may be boarding one of these planes after watching this report. Is Boeing guaranteeing your safety? The plane maker says there is no immediate cause of concern. But then again, how much can you trust Boeing? After all, it has a history of cutting corners, of trying to become the judge, jury, and executioner. In the year 2021 as well, FAA had stopped the deliveries of Boeing 787. This was after certain production flaws had surfaced. The FAA has also raised concerns about Boeing inspection methods, the Boeing inspection methods. The year before that, the agency said it was investigating manufacturing flaws in some 787 jetliners. You see, Boeing's reputation has been down in the dumps since the two 737 MAX crashes in 2018 to 19. I'm talking about the crash of the Lion Air Flight 610 and the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. The two crashes killed 346 people. Over the last couple of years, it has been revealed that Boeing knew that the planes could potentially be dangerous. Pilots employed by Boeing have been caught talking about lying to the regulators. Boeing had concealed information from the pilots, aviation authorities, and the airlines that bought these MAX planes. Is Boeing hiding something about the Dreamliners as well? So far, Dreamliners are considered to be one of the safest fleets. These planes have been in service for over 10 years now, and there have been no accidents involving a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. But one crash, and all that changes. So should airlines wait until that moment, or should they be taking precaution? What about you? Should you be worried when flying on board a Dreamliner? Let's hope there is no reason for that. Let's now move our attention to the Korean Peninsula. North Korea has test-fired 4 strategic cruise missiles. They were launched during a nuclear counter-attack drill. And here's what the North Korean state media is claiming. It says the drills demonstrate the war posture of North Korea's nuclear command, its ability to conduct a nuclear counterattack. Have a look at our next report to find out more.
North Korea's Hwasal-2 missiles travelled for 2,000 kilometres before they hit their preset targets and fell into the sea on the east. The missile launches are North Korea's third in a week. The Hermit Kingdom fired an intercontinental ballistic missile over the weekend. On Monday, it launched a pair of short-range missiles. But the latest missile tests exacerbate the nuclear tensions. You see, North Korea fired them after South Korea and the US held tabletop drills. The drills took place at the Pentagon. A joint statement says the forces simulate a response to a nuclear strike. Here's what else it says. Given North Korea's recent aggressive nuclear policy and advancements in nuclear capabilities, the tabletop exercise scenario focused on the possibility of North Korea's use of nuclear weapons. Besides the joint drills, South Korean delegation also visited the American nuclear submarine training facilities. They are located in Georgia. This is the first time that the South Korean delegation visited the facility. The US says it could forward deploy nuclear weapons to the region. The American nuclear umbrella has become all the more important for Seoul. Why is that? Because South Korea doesn't have nuclear weapons of its own. It relies entirely on the US for nuclear deterrence. On the other hand, North Korea has an active nuclear weapons program. The last time it tested a nuclear weapon was back in 2017. But there are growing concerns now. South Korea, Japan and the US say North Korea could carry out another nuclear test this year, which would be its 7th nuclear test. Besides, the communist dictatorship has also shot off a warning that it would start mass-producing nuclear warheads. The US has warned of an unparalleled response in case North Korea does carry out another nuclear test. But neither North Korea nor the US is backing down. The US and South Korea are planning more tabletop drills, computer-simulated trainings and joint field exercises, young further. There are no signs of the tensions cooling down. Not in the near future. The Korean peninsula remains on tenterhooks.
On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. We are leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching. Have a good weekend.
Start has begun. Engine ignition confirmed. The engine's throttling up. Now at full throttle. Turbo pumps at flight speed and liftoff. A new ride back to Earth for Rubio, Prokopiev, and Patelin takes aim on the International Space Station. And third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation.